By now, it probably sounds more like an evocative name than anything else. A name that just sounds right. Very right. Mandrake Linux. For many people, all that's left is the sound of the word, more than what it actually represented when it was born. Mandrake Linux sounds powerful, beautiful, perfect for technology, and it was precisely that perfect name that contributed in part to its own unraveling. But we'll get to that. Because today I'm going to tell you the full story of Mandrake Linux. What it represented, and what it still represents today, yes, today, because Mandrake Linux is not dead at all. It kept living, and it's still living, across many, many projects. We all celebrate Ubuntu, then Mint, and a few other distributions I won't even bother naming, for making Linux more human, more accessible to the everyday user, viable on the desktop. And yet I almost never hear Mandrake mentioned, and that is proof of just how ungrateful people can be, and how short historical memory really is. Mandrake Linux was the first Linux distribution to be truly human, an easy graphical installer, out of the box, a well-designed control center, and the very first, the absolute first, to ship KDE as the default desktop environment at boot, at a time when every other distro was terrified of Qt's licensing situation. A staggering story. Massively popular, as popular in its time as Ubuntu was at launch. It represented a paradigm shift, but also a lesson. The life of open source projects, even successful and widespread ones, is fragile. Let's start with its creator. Gaël Duval was born in 1973 in France. As a kid, he learned to program on a Sinclair ZX80, ZX81 connected to the family television. The machine had no persistent memory. Every time he turned it on, he had to retype the code from scratch. An involuntary but excellent training ground. He studied computer science at the University of Caen in Normandy, graduating in 1997. During his civil service, he had free time, and he used it to translate Linux how-tos into French, work for which he was given a copy of Red Hat Linux 4.1 as a gift. Two things struck him about Red Hat, the semi-graphical installer and the RPM format. Around the same time, he discovered KDE in alpha and started playing with it. The idea was born. The name Mandrake, and this is one of those details that works really well in a video, was suggested by a child. The choice is attributed to his son, who simply said, "Mandrake is magic." And no choice would ever prove more wrong. But we'll get there. Aside from the name, the project was built on ideas that were genuinely shocking for an era when Linux distributions were almost entirely aimed at geeks, with semi-graphical installers where you had to manually choose your desktop environment yourself. Mandrake adopted a completely different philosophy. It gave birth to DrakX, one of the very first fully graphical Linux installers. Previous installers were typically curses-based, that terminal-style look reminiscent of Borland interfaces on MS-DOS. DrakX broke the process into steps with explanations along the way. Language, disk, users, package selection, all with context and textual guidance. For a first-time user, it was enormously helpful. And it wasn't a static thing. It evolved release after release. Early versions were built on GTK1X, then moved to GTK 2.0 with anti-aliased fonts and graphical themes. One technical detail worth noting, it was written in Perl, an unusual and objectively brilliant choice for portability. The DrakX code is still on GitHub under OpenMandriva software. Development was led internally by Mandrake Soft. Among the historical co-maintainers was Thierry Vigneault, who later continued the same work on Mageia. Rigaud, known online as Pixel, developed URPM. If you think Yast from SUSE or the control centers in modern desktop environments are recent engineering achievements, you're mistaken. Mandrake had one, and it lives on proudly today in every distribution whose roots trace back to it. The system included a collection of tools known collectively as DrakX tools, called DrakX or DrakX. Mouse Drake for configuring the mouse, Disk Drake for partitions, Drak Connect for networking. Written in GTK Plus and Perl, most of them could run in both graphical mode and text mode and curses. The ideas behind this distribution were so exciting that Duval didn't even have his own infrastructure to host the software. He asked a few FTP servers for space, published the announcement, uploaded the files, and went on holiday for 2 weeks. When he came back, he found over 200 emails. Some people were contributing code, others were just sending words of encouragement. And there were 2 separate emails about producing CDs, one from the United States, one from Australia. The project grew rapidly, becoming effectively the most popular Linux distribution, what Ubuntu was for its generation. The first real mass adoption of Linux on the desktop didn't begin with Ubuntu. It began with Mandrake. Here are a few of the innovations, just to give you a sense of the technical scope. The first RPM-based distro to ship KDE 1.0 as the default, July 1998, when every other distro was afraid of Qt's licensing issues. URPMI, the package manager with automatic dependency resolution, shipped with Mandrake 7.0 in January 2000. It arrived 2 years before Yum and roughly 2 years after Debian's APT. CD-ROM and floppy auto-mounting with a double click, trivial today, revolutionary in 1998. Automatic X configuration. In an era when xorg.conf was an existential nightmare, Mandrake often managed to configure the graphics server on its own. Riser FS, included by default in Mandrake 7.1, June 2000, a journaled file system that wasn't yet in the mainline kernel. Every other distro only offered X2, and i586 optimization, while others were still compiling for 486. Mandrake targeted the Pentium, squeezing more performance out of the chips of that era. And then a detail you might not know. Synaptic, the famous graphical package manager adopted by Debian and loved by every old-school Linux user, was created by Conectiva, the Brazilian distribution that would later merge with Mandrake. But we'll come to that too. From 2002 to 2004, first place on DistroWatch, 3 years in a row. Mandrake was the Linux desktop distribution, full stop. So you might be wondering, how did a project this solid, this powerful, this widespread, manage to crumble over the years? It starts with a name. Mandrake was already taken. There was an American comic strip character, Mandrake the Magician, created in 1934, owned by King Features Syndicate, the Hearst Group. Mandrake Soft found it dragged into a long, expensive legal dispute over the trademark. This isn't a folkloric detail. It's one of the structural cracks that weakened the company at precisely the moment when it needed to consolidate. There was also the business question. When you're a niche project that's become popular, that's one thing. But when you become the reference Linux distribution with a growing global market and potentially lucrative clients, people start paying attention, and not always in friendly ways. In 2004, the dispute was settled, but the damage, in terms of energy and resources wasted, was done. In 2005 came the biggest move. Mandrake Soft acquired Conectiva, a Linux distribution very popular in Brazil and Latin America, also RPM-based. 2 birds, 1 stone. First, a larger critical mass by combining 2 user bases. Second, a clean end to the trademark issue because a new name was born, Mandriva, a fusion of Mandrake and Conectiva. On paper, it was a solid plan. In reality, merging 2 companies, 2 code bases, 2 organizational cultures is enormously complicated. And the consumer segment, desktop users, kept costing more than it generated. The structural crack didn't close, it widened. Meanwhile, something else was growing in Mandrake's shadow, and someone had already decided to go their own way. His name is Bill Reynolds, known online as Texstar. Between 2000 and 2003, Texstar maintained a personal repository of improved RPM packages for Mandrake Linux. It wasn't a formal project. It was one man, his server, and a community of enthusiasts. In his own words, he started all of this to have an outlet for his crazy desire to package source code without having to deal with egos, arrogance, and politics. In October 2003, Texstar officially forked Mandrake 9.2 and PCLinuxOS was born. The first releases were called previews, P5, P7, P8, all the way to P93. No grand proclamations, no company behind it, just the community. In 2005, Ubuntu launched, and the world began its steady drift toward the Debian universe. But in May 2007, PCLinuxOS 2007 came out, and something extraordinary happened. The most watched ranking in the Linux world was DistroWatch, the site that measures page clicks for distributions. It's not a perfect metric, but it was the one everyone used to read the wind. And in 2007, the wind blew hard for PCLinuxOS. For several months, that small distribution, created by a single American packager, climbed the ranking all the way to 2nd place overall, behind only Ubuntu. At certain points, in the shorter time windows, it overtook Ubuntu, becoming the most viewed distro on DistroWatch, full stop. How did it manage that? PCLinuxOS 2007 was technically excellent. KDE 3.5, Barrel 3D, those desktop effects that seemed like actual magic at the time, multimedia codecs included out of the box, Firefox, everything already configured. It was Linux that worked immediately, without ever opening a terminal. But there was something deeper, the community. Small, passionate, almost militant in its evangelism. The PCLinuxOS forum was alive, welcoming, fast to respond. Texstar had built something large companies struggled to replicate: trust. There's also a technical detail that many people miss, but which is fundamental to understanding PCLinuxOS. With the 2007 release, PCLinuxOS was no longer technically a fork of Mandrake or Mandriva. A rebase on Mandriva 2007 was done to update the code foundation, but from that point on the road was its own. PCLinuxOS dropped URPMI and adopted APT-RPM, the package management system derived from Debian, but adapted for RPM packages. An unusual and original choice. The result was a rolling release distribution before the term was even common. Continuous updates, no need to reinstall between versions. From that moment, PCLinuxOS was its own thing. It shared the DNA of its origins, but not the code. And while all this was happening, the name Mandrake was already fading. And so was Mandriva, its direct continuation. In September 2010 came the blow everyone had feared. A significant part of Mandriva's development operations, tied to a company called Edge IT, went into liquidation. Layoffs. Silence. The last release of Mandriva Linux as a historical product came out in August 2011, Mandriva Linux 2011, codename Hydrogen. After that, nothing. The company survived as a ghost for a few more years, in a desperate attempt to find traction in the enterprise market. But there was no longer a living consumer distribution. In 2015 came the official news. Mandriva SA was in final liquidation. Closed. Finished. End of story. Or was it? The day after the September 2010 layoffs, something happened. A group of developers, many of whom had just been made redundant by Mandriva, got together and announced a new project, Mageia. The name comes from Greek. It means magic. The founding manifesto was clear. Mageia was born as a community fork, to free the distribution from dependence on the fate of a single company. No longer a corporate product, a digital commune. Mageia quickly became the preferred choice for anyone who wanted to continue the Mandriva experience without worrying whether the company behind it would survive the next month. On the DistroWatch ranking, it soon surpassed Mandriva itself. But there was another path. In 2012, while Mandriva SA was in its death throes, the OpenMandriva Association was formally established, a non-profit body with a different goal from Mageia. Not a rupture fork, but an institutional continuation of the Mandriva line. OpenMandriva LX releases regularly to this day. It's technically closer to the Mandriva cooker heritage than Mageia, and it's taken some bold directions, including adopting Clang and LLVM as the default compiler, an avant-garde choice that very few distributions have dared to make. Less popular than Mageia, less visible, but alive. Mandrake's diaspora leaves us 3 distributions, 3 projects that today are almost entirely different from one another, yet serious enough, alive enough, and respected enough by the community to deserve far more attention than they get. We've understood why Mandrake fell apart. But in this story, we can read something larger. How the Linux ecosystem made a very clear choice toward the Debian world. How difficult it is to build a business on Linux. How equally difficult it is to maintain both a community and a commercial company at the same time. And how fragile these things are, far more fragile than their popularity and reach might suggest. Mandrake didn't die, it broke apart, and in that breaking, it survived. PCLinuxOS, the solitary path. One man against bureaucracy, who won precisely because he had no masters. Mageia, the self-governing community path, born from the anger of the laid off and the refusal to let 20 years of work disappear. OpenMandriva, the path of institutional legacy for those who wanted the name and the code to continue in the form closest to the original. 3 different answers to the same question. What happens when a company doesn't make it, but the idea was right? Linux can be for everyone. And that story, in some way, is still going.